created everything. Look what a powerful being you are. You did these things, but now you're in a human body, you forget the power you have.
Welcome to Metamystics, where you don't know what you don't know. Today, we have a very interesting guest, Jonathan Dickinson from the Ambio Life Sciences. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yes. I'm always so fascinated to talk about, to talk to people who are really into and understanding the facts about psychedelic plants. Is it safe to call Ibogaine a psychedelic, or is that term a little too edgy these days?
No, I think broadly it applies. We do get a little bit more specific sometimes when we're talking about Ibogaine, and we call it an oneirogen, which means it's dream generating, because sometimes the content that comes up, the visions that people see, the way that they process and think through them kind of resembles a little bit more like dreams. But I would say that's a smaller little circle inside of the Venn diagram of psychedelics.
Yes. I love that term too. The oneirogen is awesome. Yeah. Like, to be honest, I actually come from a point of view that I believe this entire reality is a dream, and that was kind of my understanding whenever I went on psychedelics and I was able to be, or all the different kind of psychedelics, and able to be what felt like was a dream that was more real than this reality. So if that's more real, then wouldn't this be the dream? And you spin out of control a little bit trying to grasp at what you may think that still exists from reality. But it is man, and it's so strange too, because it is like a whole other world. I mean, I don't know about Ibogaine, but I've done DMT and mushrooms and a few other things, and yeah, it's pretty amazing, both good and bad, but amazing nonetheless, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing, if you've taken something like mushrooms or LSD, there's some differences with Ibogaine, where I think if you take those other psychedelics, you can kind of feel like the environment around you is sort of saturated, like lit up with movement and meaning. And the stuff that you're feeling internally also feels like it's really imminent and kind of, like even the sort of boundary between yourself and the outside world kind of feels like more fluid than it used to be. But with Ibogaine, I think there's some ways where it's almost the opposite of that. Like most people don't really pay very much attention to what's going on in the world around them. Like you can be aware of it, but there's a gravity that really pulls you inward, especially on bigger doses. So you really want to like lay down and close your eyes. That's the impulse. And then the things that come up there, a lot of times people describe it almost like they're seeing something on a screen. That's kind of the extreme of it, but it's pretty common. Like they're being presented with something. So even just if you ask people to naturally describe the experience, they'll talk about it showed me or whatever. Like this is a little different than how people describe LSD most of the time. It's just so that this quality of being shown something or presented with something can even get to the point where you're seeing other people or like you're in dialogue with this thing, like an internal voice or something that you're seeing. So I think that's pretty specific to it. But that feeling of like you're still you and you're very familiar to yourself and your body's still here, but there's something else happening is really distinct.
Oh man, yeah, it's I'm to be honest, I'm kind of scared to try it because I hear that because and to be honest, like my last psychedelic experience, I said, all right, I'm taking a whole year off because it scared the absolute shit out of me. But Ibogaine, I actually know a few people who have done it. Most notably, the White Boy Wizard, big time listener of the show, good friend of the show. And it was a phenomenal experience for him. And I believe that he followed it up with the 5-MeO DMT. Is that a typical practice with Ibogaine?
So it's become a little bit more common. At Ambio, that's part of the program. It's a optional part of the program. For most people, like we have three different programs that people go through. So the two main programs where like I would say 90% of folks that we're treating go through 5-MeO is on offer. And then yeah, it's a little bit different than what I just described, where like there's you and something else, and you're in this dualistic, you know, interaction. 5-MeO people often describe where it goes towards is this kind of non-dual state. So sort of integrative, and this unitary consciousness where like the you're like a drop of water joining back with the ocean or something. But there's also a sense of like finality with the 5-MeO that it's a little bit more predictable as a psychedelic. It sort of is a little bit more like what people were expecting. And it's also very energizing. So Ibogaine, sometimes it leaves people in this long process of reviewing stuff and integrating what happened and not really clear about what it means yet because there's a lot of work to do. And 5-MeO can actually, but like physically and emotionally and cognitively help people sort of come back and reconnect with the world again. So it accelerates the process quite a bit, in addition to being, you know, an incredible experience in its own right.
So and I could be wrong here, but it's not like you would ever go and do Ibogaine for fun or out of curiosity, right? Like, because I hear that, it's not saying that it's not fun. I don't know, but it's more so to kind of deal with your more inward trauma than it is to go into mushroom land and, talk to Yoshi or anything.
I mean, it has an aura of seriousness around it, but I've done it out of curiosity. I mean, I'm researching Ibogaine. I've done it to learn more about it and myself. And I think I've seen other people do that. But it's a serious thing. It's a big investment of time and energy and just the amount of care that needs to go into providing Ibogaine in a safe way. So, um, yeah, and then there's a risk, like there's the reason why there needs to be so much care around it. Like Ambio has the underlying foundation of a medical clinic with cardiac monitors, and there's cardiologists on call if we need to do extra screening for people. There's all this stuff around it. I think because of all that, we've helped to mitigate the cardiac risk to the point where it's quite manageable. There's still other risks if you're using street drugs and um, other kinds of conditions and things, but for the cardiac risk, I think we've got it managed. It's just that, here it comes packaged in like a cardiac ICU. So it comes with this very strong aura of seriousness when you're going into it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I've never done any kind of psychedelic in a clinical or even a shamanic setting. And I
Uh-huh.
think that I would like to, if I ever do it again, I'm not even 100% sure because that last time really fucked me up. But I mean,
Right.
it's good, you learn to integrate it and everything. So it's just like, do I really want to like risk that again?
Yeah.
But I think that I would love to be, around somebody who knows how to set the scene and, maybe playing some drums or, like you in the
Mm.
clinical setting or something like that. Because man,
Hmm.
whenever it gets scary, you feel like you have nobody. Even if you're in a room full of your friends, they don't know what the fuck to do. Like, what are you gonna, because I mean, most of the time I've done it, they were tripping too. So how are they gonna
Right,
help me?
right.
But yeah, it would definitely make me personally feel better if I knew that I was being watched over for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think again, it's not that it's not relevant to Ibogaine, but Ibogaine's different. So I think in with other psychedelics like LSD or mushrooms, if you were in a setting where the sort of frame around you was let's lay down and put on some eye shades, and there's somebody that's going to be like watching around, so make sure that everything is going to be okay. You don't have to be, you know checking the doorbell or your phone if something's going on, your dog's fed, whatever. You don't really have to worry about things. So you sort of have a permission structure to be able to just go really deep and relax into it. And so even if something comes up and you pull your eye shades up for a second, but the invitation is there to kind of go back inward, it's kind of an easier way to do psychedelics. And I think then if you don't get stuck in between having to manage anything outside of you. And Ibogaine almost has that sort of built in to the architecture because it just makes you lie down. Like even if you were by yourself or even if you were in a room with your friends at a party and you all took Ibogaine, it would turn into a really loungy party real quick because it just makes you lie down. I'm not saying do it at a party. I'm just saying like that's what Ibogaine does is it sort of makes you want to lay down and close your eyes. So it brings you inward automatically, you know. So
Oh, I
it's not
like
the
that.
only way to do psychedelics, but I think that provides you with and it's not like there's not also difficulty of material to work through, but it takes out that social aspect that can sometimes become confusing to navigate while something's pulling you into that other world, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, and anytime I do psychedelics personally, you know what, and the one that I've done the most is called 4-ACO DMT.
Okay.
And the way I describe it is it's basically like DMT and mushrooms met and decided to make some sweet baby love, and
Yeah.
then they
Okay.
formed this bad boy. And I like it because it's really just a perfect mix between the two. It feels like,
Mm,
but you know, I like it anytime I do it and anytime I'm around anybody doing it, I always say, like, look, I'm not here whenever we do this. Like, I take this shit pretty serious. You know, I'm trying to go in there and work through some shadow work, or I'm trying to go to another dimension and maybe receive a bit of information from another, you know, beyond the veil or something like that. Like, I'm not doing it to party. I'm not going to go to a
right.
rave and trip
Yeah.
balls. I'm 36 years old, dude. I'm beyond that, you know, like that's, I'm good on that.
Right.
But you know, I'm always like real big on people closing their eyes and going inward because it is a
Mm,
full on journey. I mean, it is
yeah.
such a beautiful thing, and I know some people will say that like, well, maybe that's what you experience whenever you die because it said that you know a large amount of DMT expresses through your pineal gland whenever you die, and you just go into heaven tripping balls, I guess. And but I don't know. It could be possible, I guess. I mean, it's kind of we can only theorize on it, you know.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. It's a beautiful thing though to be able to when you go into a psychedelic state, it at least it challenges you to let go of something that you didn't even necessarily know you were holding on to.
Yeah, make you
You
remember
know
some
what I mean?
stuff.
Yeah, like such a profound shift of perspective that it allows us to imagine death. Like, what is it that I identify with, and how, you know, how singular is that point of awareness that I am, that if I go over here, it's like so vastly different. So I think it at least opens up the scope of like, yeah, what, you know, death could be whatever. But if we, it's like a little bit of practice, you know, going out and relaxing into that kind of change, like letting go
Yeah, it is. It is. It
the
can be
self.
definitely really comforting going that deep into. I mean, is it into yourself? Is it into like what do you think is actually going on? Like, is it? Are you seeing? You know the minutia of what it means for you to exist, or are you going to another dimension? What do you think is really going on with that?
I would be speculating a lot more to say other psychedelics do this because I think I have some personal experience, but I don't have quite the same. I haven't like studied it quite as much. So I don't know. I don't really have a dog in the race about whether the DMT aliens are real or they're just part of you. Like I don't know. I can it's an entertaining discussion. But with Ibogaine, the way I see it is like most of the time it's sort of like this internal hall of mirrors, like that thing that's presenting something back to you. I think it is you. I think it's sort of like an ancestral problem solving mechanism where we see this authoritative voice that comes to us from outside of us, or here it sounds like it's coming from outside of us to speak to us, but it's just part of ourselves that we don't identify with fully. And I mean, you go down to like, I don't know, I had an experience in Gabon where, unrelated to Ibogaine or Iboga, I almost died because I got malaria.
Oh,
And so I had this time in the hospital where I was laid out really close to death in some ways. You know, I was getting good care, but like it was, if untreated, it would have been a bad situation. Um, and I had these visions laid out on all the medications they were giving me of like my body as a forest, and there was all these insects moving through it and crawling and clamoring for energy and sort of redistributing the energy of the forest and consuming it and reproducing it. And I think on some level we are like we experience ourselves as like a singular point of awareness, but we're like a host to many organisms that are amazingly coordinated together, but can experience like invasion from outside of ourselves and all this stuff. So they're like, I think even it's really hard to define like what when we say it's coming from me or like I'm hearing something from inside of myself, like where does that come from? You know what I mean? We already know that there's genetics that are passed down from ancestors and before we were even, you know, the same species. So who knows what voices that we're hearing or what that means. I do think that it's a deeply part of us.
yeah, yeah, I get that same feeling too. It does bring you back to oneness for sure. And it makes you, it's not like a, you know, I don't know. I used to have these really weird dreams where they didn't make any sense at the time anyway,
Hmm.
because it was basically like I was in like this tube or this vat, and but I wasn't my body. I was like this blob of fucking goo or something, and I was trying to get out of this tube, but then there was this bigger blob that tried to jump into the tube and essentially tried to absorb me. And I would have this dream over and over and over again. It was completely, it didn't make any damn sense. And I don't even know why I was scared to be absorbed. I don't, it was just the strangest thing, but it was a haunting nightmare all the time. And so, you know, you go into that and it's like, all right, well, if I'm just in a dream, what is that, you know, if I'm trying to really break it down, is that you know, a larger portion of myself that is trying to absorb the smaller portion of myself? That, you know, you get really weird with it, but
Hmm. Hmm.
you ever have those dreams to where it's like they don't really make a whole lot of sense, and it causes you to just think about them? I only bring that up because it reminds me of a psychedelic. Like I've had a similar experience on
Right.
psychedelics too, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have had dreams that don't make a whole ton of sense at the moment. Sometimes maybe you can tease something out of it later, but I don't know. I think, you know, it's relevant. Ibogaine, people talk about it like it's dreamlike, it's an neurogen. But I think we almost pay too much attention to the content of what's coming up,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what it might mean, or, you know, people go in sort of hoping for a vision. And the problem is sometimes people get these really crazy visions and these crazy stories that they come out with. But, you know, I did a sort of a statistical analysis on it, and it seemed like at least 25% of people weren't coming back with really anything to report.
Oh.
And I was one of them one time. I didn't have any visions really at all, or maybe some minor stuff at the beginning where it was more like interesting thoughts and feelings about what was going on before I settled into it and just blasted it out, you know. But sometimes it's not about the content. It's just about the shift of perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It seems like that. It'll give you an entirely new perspective on everything. Like, and it's so strange too. I had an experience once on 4-ACO DMT, and I remember like getting visions of like this other world. I don't know if it was a past life or a linear life that I was peeking into. It's so hard to be able to tell from from that regular perspective, but whenever I saw that it was basically our world, but everything meant something else. If that makes any sense. It was like the
Yeah,
words and
sure.
meanings and definitions were completely scattered over there. Like what we see as good and bad, almost like they had good and bad over there, but it was like they were reversed or,
Mhm.
scrambled. It's like it was hard to really define what was really going on over there because the words and the actions that were being used and done, it's like I couldn't make sense of it. I could tell that it was, maybe us in another, reality or something like that, but entirely different as far as meaning goes.
Yeah, I think I think what they allow us to do is sort of step out of the symbolic world that surrounds us. I think that's mostly what it's doing when we're having to let go of the identity or whatever. It's just the symbols that are the reference points of how we fit into the world.
Yeah, yeah, it's man, such a literal trip. Just out of curiosity, I just got done reading this book. It's called oh shoot, what was it called again? The Teachings of Don Juan. And it's an
Okay.
older book. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it
Hmm.
came out back in the
Oh yeah.
60s. And he talks about and it's about peyote, right? And mescaline inside of peyote. And he
Hmm.
would say that the spirit inside of the peyote he called it mescalito, right? And that was
Hmm.
kind of like the governing spirit. And you hear about ayahuasca and the spirit of Aya and stuff like that. Is there any kind of, regular spirit that is attached to Ibogaine?
Yeah, so people have talked about that with Ibogaine specifically, I think because of what I was talking about, that sense that there's something that's like presenting you with information or can even get to the point where you're in this dialogue with it, right? So people have like Leo Zeff, who was the famous sort of underground psychologist back in the 60s when it became illegal, he went underground and sort of spun out all these little chapters of people who would had a very specific way of continuing to work with psychedelics therapeutically in groups and stuff. Anyways, he used to call it Mr. Ibogaine. Because people would just in different times and places independently recognize that there was such a strong sense of that. When I was in Gabon the first time, the most influential thing, like the words that struck me the most, were somebody describing that they're animist, that they believe that all matter is energy that was the same energy that was present in the Big Bang.
Mm.
And that if you learn how to communicate or you learn the language of things in this world, then you can learn how to communicate with God. And I thought that was so interesting because it was so different than how I had understood animism. Like I thought animism was very anthropomorphic, like there's Mescalito or there's Mr. Ibogaine or something. And what they were saying was that no, it wasn't. It was that everything was aware and had an energy to it, but it was more structured like a language rather than like a whole bunch of entities, and they were more interested in this ultimate other rather than the spirit of Iboga or whatever. They were more interested in whether Iboga could be used as a tool to access this kind of ultimate consciousness in reality, which I thought was really interesting, and I appreciated that.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah. I
so
actually I've done a good amount of research on animism and Platonism, which is essentially the same thing.
mm.
And I actually get down with it. I'm here for everything is one thing, and separation is an illusion. I'm here for all that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the meaning I took out. I don't know that that's necessarily universal in Bouti or Gabon. Like people definitely talk about spirits and stuff, but I appreciate it, and it helped me sort of have this compass of like, yeah, it's not necessarily about trying to build relationships with these individual spirits or whatever. It is more about whether or not it propels us towards this kind of ultimate reality. And otherwise, I think a lot of the stuff that we see is reflections of ourselves, you know?
Which is
Like,
beautiful. I mean, if you really think
yeah.
about it, your subjective perspective is you're the only one that gets to experience that. You know, like in reality, your subjective experience is in your reality the only thing that exists. Now we like to play around and look at certain things as if they may be objective, but as
Mhm.
I always bring up, like within car crashes, you get 10 people to see a car crash, they're all going to have a different experience. And I actually experienced that one time where I saw a car crash happen in real time, and it was a little old lady that decided to go on red, on the red light, right? And I don't know what the hell she was doing, probably a little too old to be on the road in my opinion. But anyway, so she was driving and she ran a red light and crashed into somebody. And then there was like 3 or 4 cars behind me. We all saw the same thing, and we waited to and we tried to help the woman out. We called the police and the
Hmm.
ambulance and everything. All of us gave a different story about what happened. Now, we were all there. We were
Oh,
all watching it. But our subjective experience, whenever something major like that happens, it's like a shock to the system. And then your system almost like, I don't know, maybe it gives you a different image or a different picture about what it is and how you're going to associate with an action like that. And it literally changes exactly. I don't know if it changes what you saw or what, but it's so strange. And that's why I'm real big on, I like to take it all the way weird. I think that objective reality doesn't exist. Like, I mean, that's just in my own experience, and I'm always open to grow and evolve on philosophies and theories and such. But that is how I feel right now, and I got to say, whenever I'm dabbling into any onirigens or psychedelics, I'm just reminded of that. It's like it becomes more than a belief. It becomes, well, duh. Like that's kind of like the light bulb that goes off in my mind. I don't know. What's your experience with that?
that's super interesting that you bring up that example specifically. So in my reading of like I should say my study of Ibogaine, I really dove into the work of Jacques Lacan. I don't know if you've ever heard that name. A lot of people in North
No.
America haven't. He's like a psychoanalyst, very famous in the 60s and the 70s. In French and in Spanish, he's very well known and very well read. But like in English, for some reason, it hasn't broken through. And we've tended to drift away from psychoanalysts and psychoanalysis in general. But he's still like a towering figure if you go into psychoanalysis, really dense stuff. But there was a gift that people gave me in Africa that just like popped up in his work, and it sort of made this link for me, and I made me curious enough to keep reading him. Anyways, he talks about um different registers in the psyche. And so when we're born, we're in contact with whatever he calls as the real. And so in that, and I do take this view. I do appreciate it. I do think that there is a basis of the real. But he says what it is it's what we cannot symbolize or we cannot categorize. That is the real. It's whatever resists symbolism or categorization. So then, as we kind of try to move through the world, there's other registers of the psyche, one of which is the symbolic world around us. And so we actually identify most strongly with these other registers of the psyche, and we lose touch with the real as we grow older. Like it's much more important to us to exist in language and in other things that are symbolic, like whatever money or symbols or status or sex or whatever things that sort of we define ourselves with. But when the real breaks back into our life, it's traumatic because it disrupts the symbolic register of the psyche really profoundly. And so he says things like, when a woman's giving birth, there's an element of the real, and you can tell because it changes her identity in the world, how other people see her, how she sees herself. It changes her entire internal and external makeup about how she's orients herself towards the world, because something in a sense traumatic has, or whatever, has imprinted on her in a different way because the real has
Oh.
interjected into reality. So the car crash is another really good example because it's like you really ignore, there's something that you can't categorize there. But what you described, the way you described it is even like a more visceral example of how when the real interjects in reality, it sort of shatters the symbolic world and the symbolic register for us to the point where we struggle to categorize it and put the pieces together.
Yeah. Wow. That was I need to look more into that. Would you say Jacques? What was it?
Jacques Lacan.
Jacques Lacan. Okay, I need to look.
Lacan. Yeah.
All right, I definitely need to do a little research on that. I'm just always so fascinated with people's different perspectives about how to really try and grasp onto what is real and what is kind of like your mind filling in the blanks, you know?
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying is I think mostly we identify with our mind filling in the blanks. And whenever the real comes, it's like, holy fuck, like here we go. It's too much to bear.
Yeah, yeah, because it's almost like that deeper part of you knows that it's real. A deeper part of you knows that it exists almost.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's just so much easier to exist in symbolic land. And a lot of people
Yeah.
forget almost that symbolic land and real land are, pretty different, because eventually you start like identifying symbolic land as the real land until you get a little shockwave, to the system with something like that.
Yeah, like yeah, so it's different what he's saying, like we're not talking about like if there's a reality, that's like set that aside.
Yeah,
But
beyond
for
that.
him, the real is like something different than that, like that it's whatever can't be categorized. But it is like I think so. What he talks about too is there's all these registers of the psyche, and at the middle of them all, at the point where they all meet, where the real does touch the symbolic and the imaginary world, he says that there's something called jouissance. But it means in French, it means like enjoyment. But he left it in the French because enjoyment doesn't really do it justice. Like, so jouissance is like a very specific term. And this is going like deep into the psychoanalyst stuff, but Freud talked about that we're driven by pleasure, right? Which is like a release of stress,
Yes.
that we pursue this release of stress. Lacan says, hold on, we're actually driven often by this jouissance, which is something that takes us beyond pleasure, even to the point where there's like pain that starts to emerge. We can be driven by that. And that jouissance that pulls us out there is like the real is bound up in that. And so we pursue it, but it's like transforms us in the process. So I think psychedelics, one of the things that they offer us, and it's not necessarily about the content of the visions or whether you had a good time or a bad time or whatever. It's because it's that feeling of that level of jouissance, like where it gets to the point where it's so uncomfortable and too much to manage, and that is what allows us to sort of change our relationship to the symbolic world or reimagine the symbolic world, sort of break apart the map and redraw it, hopefully in better alignment with like the raw data of what we actually need to be considering instead of just habit or tradition or whatever. I think, anyways,
Yeah,
that's
no, I
yeah.
I feel like I know exactly what you're talking about, and I've often associated that as lame or whatever as it may sound. I just call that place home. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it feels like in a like a good home, not like a, some kind of I know some people have had, traumatic childhood experiences and all that, but like a good home, if you can imagine that, like I'm finally here. And I don't know what here means, but
Mm.
um yeah, man, it kind of gives me chills just thinking about it. Anyhow, so all right. I'm curious as to how you got involved with this business, and what were the steps that led you in this on this journey.
So it was personal to me. There was a couple of things that all happened. So the main I think force of Ibogaine in my life is like it connects all these different threads. So one of the threads was I really liked literature growing up and sort of dove into all these books and um, one of them that I came across in high school is called Writing on Drugs. And it was basically going through the history of literature and a bunch of seminal works and how they were all inspired by the drugs that were available to artists at that time. Like Mary Shelley was writing Frankenstein while she was drinking tons of laudanum, which is like opium infused wine and
Oh, I didn't
stuff like
know
that.
that.
Yeah, so there was all it was a really interesting book. I really thought it was interesting. But I think what I picked out of it was, oh, like it was like right around the time when I really started to grasp literature and like how creative minds were actually like the complexity of what they were building and that it wasn't obvious or easy to do. And that those folks were having experiences that in informed their creativity and their expression of that. So that drew me towards that. So I think that was significant because that's not the same thing as a clinical healing frame. That's different. That's like a different type of thing. That's like trying to have a different experience or shift your perspective, right? So that was sort of my first frame of like how I started really thinking about drugs. But then I got put on antidepressants when I was in high school, and I had a really hard time coming off of them. And I had bad withdrawal for like several years and really struggled with it. So the first time that I actually took a psychedelic myself was several years after that. And they just helped me to come alive again. Like I felt like I didn't know if the world around me was real or if I had a place in it or if I was real at all and was like a wisp of a soul that could just vanish at any time and I wouldn't even know the difference.
It's a scary place to be.
It was a weird place. And then it was being able to come back and be like in contact with my body and like the world and like feel things and that really left a deep impression. So that's really what drove me. But then I got involved in drug policy work. So, like at the time, I'm Canadian, there was a lot of stuff going on around a supervised injection site in the downtown east side of Vancouver. So, it was a safe place for people who were injecting drugs like heroin to be able to go in and do it under the supervision of a nurse to, if they overdose, they would have Narcan and they would do other kinds of primary care services for wounds and whatever, um, prevent infections and things like that. Anyways, politically, there were big topics. I was really interested in psychedelics, so I kept trying to bring psychedelics into the conversation with um, harm reduction and drug user rights and stuff like that. And so somebody eventually was like, "You just got to go look at Ibogaine because that's what they're doing over there. It's a peer led by people who use drugs and use most of them at that time were like people who would come off of drugs with Ibogaine and were running clinics, but it was very psychedelic. So it was again one of this like bringing together all the strands. So that's
Oh
how I got
God.
involved. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So there's differing varieties of ibogaine. Is it kind of like the differing varieties of DMT in a way?
I think there's just different forms that it can take, but it's still Ibogaine. So Iboga is a shrub or it can grow to a tree. Um, when we're talking about eating Iboga, you're talking about eating the root bark of that shrub or that tree. And so in Africa, that's what you eat. Traditionally, it's the root bark is like peeled off, powdered up, and eaten in spoonfuls. Um, when we're talking about ibogaine, ibogaine is the primary active alkaloid in iboga. So it's like mescaline to peyote, although peyote's got more alcohol. It's like 40 some odd alkaloids. Ibogaine's maybe got like 13 or something, or maybe more, but major secondary ones about 13.
Well, what does
So
that mean, if you don't mind me asking? The different alkaloids, does that mean it's like weaker or stronger, or has nothing to do with
no, they're
that?
just other molecules that the plant produces. So it's not just producing um, one single chemical. Um, but in peyote, mescaline is the main one that we know is psychoactive. However, it's also very obvious if you take mescaline and then you take peyote that the other ones are not doing nothing. They're doing something. Like
Oh,
the there's still the core experience is very similar, but there's an influence. They're shaped by and rounded out by the other alkaloids that are in there. And also you're eating plant material. So with iboga too, you're eating plant material, you digest it differently. So the onset is different. It's more gradual. It doesn't absorb and peak as much. So one of the differences with ibogaine is just when it comes on real fast if you ate a white powder because by the time you absorb it, it's just peaking, whereas iboga is slower and it builds and it's a little
like a
um,
mushroom.
sure, yeah. It would probably be like that. If you ate a mushroom, it'd be a little slower than if you ate like powdered psilocybin or something.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I haven't tried that, but that's the essence of it. So when we're talking about ibogaine, that's what we're talking about. Sometimes there's products that are like part way, like they're extracted from the root bark, but they keep some of the other alkaloids in there. But at the clinics, a lot of the time we're using ibogaine, and in the traditional settings, most of the time they're using iboga.
I got you. So ibogaine would be like the powdered form, and iboga would be the plant form. You're saying, right?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it whenever you ingest the ibogaine, you say it's a powder that you eat?
Yeah, the ibogaine is also a powder, so it gets extracted into a white powder, and then we put it in capsules.
Gotcha. Okay. And
Yeah.
whenever that comes on, so
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, how many times have you partook? If you know a number, is it a lot?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I've done lots of like micro dosing or smaller doses, but in terms of like a large dose, like what you'd think about if you took Ibogaine and you laid down and you had a big experience, probably somewhere like 10 or so,
Oh, okay. Well, that's
including some of those being in Africa eating Iboga, and then some of them being in a clinical setting eating Ibogaine, but I would count them on the same hands.
oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And eh, so I've done DMT once. Well, I did it twice in one night, but and as far as soon as because you smoke it, or at least the one that I did, you smoke, and as
Yeah.
soon as you smoke, everybody always talks about a blast off. Like
Right.
immediately, as
Yeah.
soon as it's leaving your lungs, you are blasting off. And so much, at least for me anyway, I smoked it and literally felt like my body was being rocketed. Like it was the craziest feeling. I legit, and I
Yeah.
got it on video, I have tears running down my face as if I'm blasting through the air, like whenever you're on a roller coaster, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what it
Yeah.
was like. It was like that was my body's reaction and my tears were showing it.
Yeah.
Is Ibogaine similar to that?
Maybe if you smoke it, but I don't know anybody who's doing that. Like, I think it's the mode of ingestion that creates that velocity. So, like, if you drank ayahuasca, it would be slower, right? It has slower onset, it lasts longer, but partly because of the the way it's metabolized. But No. So if you're eating Ibogaine orally, it has a slower onset than that. They can be anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, sometimes more than that, a little bit more than that. But um, yeah, and even we space out the doses a little bit for a bunch of reasons. Because if somebody starts feeling it really fast and it's very intense, then we have the option to not take the last one, you know?
Yeah.
So, but also because, like I said, if you're taking a powder that's been extracted, it does come on really fast when it absorbs. So if you take the whole dose all at once, it's gonna maybe still take 2 or 3 hours, but then it's gonna come on real hard. So it doesn't give us a lot of room to judge how strong the effects are. So we space them out. And this way, 2 or 3 hours in, you want to lay down and then you're gradually building up towards the peak. And, the other thing that's quite different about Ibogaine is just how long it lasts. So like DMT, you're probably coming back to the room and you
Couple
could probably
minutes.
go have some snacks in like half an hour.
Right.
But no, Ibogaine, it's quite long. So the acute trip, I guess, is like 8 to 12 hours, and then you're not coming out of that with, all the way home yet. Like we call it like a gray day. So the next 12, 24, 36 hours, still people are laid out and resting. And sometimes people want to come downstairs and have bacon and eggs and chat all about it, but they're still not doing their taxes or, stuff like that.
So
But
there's an
I would say
integration period afterward, you're saying.
there's a long integration period. And for a lot of people, like for me, it's like I'm just laying there looking at the paint on the ceiling, or just the inside of my eyelids for like all day. There's nothing to do. It really takes you into this mode of like all you got to do is just exist there. And sometimes people are still seeing a little bit of stuff and whatever. So it's not until later when you're able to eat some food and get a shower and have a couple of hours of sleep at least, then you start to get your energy back. But there's times when, for me, I would say sometimes it's like 8 to 10 days before I could go back into the gym and do like a full exertion workout. Like
Is
it
it like
really
a
asks you for a lot. It
so
takes a while.
so it's like a there's no point in me doing that because I'm just existing either way kind of feeling, or like, because I feel like I felt that
Oh,
way
it feels
too.
good. It feels like even though when it's hard or whatever, it still feels like what you're doing, it's like a good thing. It feels like a medicine,
You mean
you know?
afterward?
During too, even when it's hard. But yeah, once your energy comes back, I think that's where you really see the fruits, right? Like a lot of stuff that we do for pleasure, you pay the bill later,
Mhm.
like alcohol or whatever, you get all the fun bits at the front and
Yep.
then you pay the toll, pay the tab. With Ibogaine, you definitely it asks you for everything up front, and then the benefits come later, and it's really in like the weeks and the months that follow. Like that, if I would say if you're really gonna talk about what Ibogaine did for you, you kind of gotta wait like 6 months or a year before you really get a better sense of what you even need to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's that the neuroplasticity, is working
Yeah.
there too. It's expanding it and growing it and
Yeah.
creating different routes, and now you're thinking in other ways that you never used to think. So it's kind of a lot, I imagine, with the integration process with those neural pathways opening up and, helping you see things from different angles as well.
For sure. Yeah, there was a cool study out of Johns Hopkins where they were looking at the neuroplasticity after different substances. And so they did like ketamine was like 2 days, psilocybin, MDMA, 2 weeks, LSD was like 3 weeks. And Ibogaine, they only measured for a month, but it didn't even like come all the way down. Like it was just barely starting to come down after a month. So you're looking at
Wow.
like a really huge window of neuroplasticity and change afterwards. And I think subjectively, maybe what that sounds, I don't know, like it feels like being able to have some amount of choice where there wasn't a choice before. Like being able to look at a situation that might have been automatic, might have been patterned and habitual, and all of a sudden realizing that there's no momentum. Like you could do whatever you want and being able to choose. And even just having little like an amount of that in between certain decisions can change things quite a bit, especially when
Ah,
you play it out over weeks and months, right? Like
kind of
it
adds a
gives you
little
that
bit,
opportunity.
kind of adds a little bit of like ligament in between bones rubbing up against each other, you know,
There you go.
just
Yeah.
to get
So just
weird.
that space, like that second to think or process something before you do it.
That makes so much sense. And of course, that would be the main benefit of somebody taking Ibogaine because you're trying to knock bad habits or, you know, habitual things that are not for your benefit.
Sure. Yeah. You're trying to feel better. I think when we have a feeling like we're not just like locked on to a set of train tracks and like barreling through our life, and like all of a sudden you have some sense of agency, any gain that you have in that respect feels good.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude. Because a lot of people do absolutely feel trapped in, you know, with a lot of the things that do seem a bit more rigid, or I have to do this, or I have to be this, or I have to act this way, and to know that you have a lot more wiggle room than just the
Yeah.
foundational structure that you built in your own mind, man, that can be very very freeing. And just out of curiosity, if you don't mind, this is gonna be a bit of a personal question. You don't have to answer it. Um, could you could you tell us a little bit about an experience that you've had on Ibogaine? Like like what goes on in the mind, an experience that you have had, if you can put it into words.
I think I like James Fadiman, who's another kind of legendary early uh, psychedelic therapist, said nothing is ineffable, and I think it's true. I think you can try to describe, um, you know, you like capture everything in words, but you can describe it. So I mean, I guess one of the things, like I'm not a huge visualizer, so I'm not going to tell you the coolest story that you've ever heard about Ibogaine because some people come back with really incredible journeys. And so, that part of what made me really interested in talking to people who had those was after I went to Gabon the first time for initiation. It was the biggest dose that I'd taken at that point. Um, I didn't really see much at all. And I didn't really care. Like it wasn't like I felt like I missed anything. It was what played out over the next 2 years that was interesting. And so, but being able to have that and being able to sort of talk to people and not be disappointed when they said they didn't see anything or they didn't trip. Actually, a lot of the time, it was just a matter of asking a little bit more closely, like, well, what did happen? And then being able to put, because sometimes things happen and it's a little bit harder to identify them because they're not what we were expecting. We didn't blast off in a rocket ship and see aliens and things like that, but there's a smaller little thing. So one experience that I did see a little more was the second time I was in Gabon and doing initiation. And in that setting, it was a little bit different because sometimes there's traditions where they give you a very large dose and you're just going to lie down. And it's you and the medicine. And then when you come back, we're going to talk about it and we're going to figure out what happened. We're going to prep you. We're all going to be here. Then we'll catch you on the other side. Um, the second time I went is a little different. It's a Misoko tradition, and that one they use smaller doses, and it's a lot more active and engaged the whole time. So I wasn't allowed to lay down. Where there was things to do, I had to go places, I had to see things, I had to pay attention to what was happening because they were providing like a symbolic reference point that later we would refer back to, and I would see elements of it again and learn about what they were doing. So on that experience, the first thing that I felt was just like walking back to the temple. I felt like my head open up and there was I could see just like the empty blue sky above me, and there was a sun like burning in the sky, right straight ahead, straight above me. And then, so in that setting, because it's lower dose, you're supposed to tell them what you see. So I told them, and they said, "That's good. Next time that you see a sun, you got to go inside of it because there's going to be a treasure."
Mm.
Okay. I was like, "That's super interesting." I couldn't like invoke it or anything again. But the next thing I saw was just like um, butterfly, like neon kind of edges, like a big blue butterfly. And I wasn't sure what to do about it. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go inside of it. And then I went in to this butterfly, and all I saw was a bunch of blue squiggly lines. And so I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to go inside the butterfly. Maybe that's like there wasn't really a treasure there or anything. It was just the recognition that, oh no, there's a language here that I have to try to understand. And I need some help with it. Like I got to try to lean on them because they seem to have some really good suggestions. Um, Anyways, there was things like that, but a lot of the things that I saw were sort of minor and like would have been nonsensical if I didn't have the help interpreting them. And and the other thing was they never built up into a powerful story like sometimes they do. And it was interesting because after the experience, they give you a name. I didn't even really that like actually in this case, they gave me the name before I saw all that stuff. And they said that your name will be Abando, which means the beginning. So
Oh, cool.
they gave me the name at the beginning instead of at the end. But whatever, it's you know. But then all the stuff that I saw was really just the beginnings of what could have evolved into stories. But it was because I study this so and like the psychoanalysis and stuff. So I was really interested just in the semantics and the grammar of the experience and like breaking it down, like seeing it and understanding it like it's a language rather than like a big story about my childhood or something like that. I don't know if that makes sense. So for me, that was meaningful, and I can take something from it. Whereas, otherwise it would be, I don't know, maybe not as sensible
What do
for
you
someone.
think? What do you think that was all about? Them giving you the name Abondo, and then you just see a bunch of beginnings within your trip. It was almost like, is that some kind of neurolinguistic programming that they caused you to experience that, or what do you think is going on there?
I mean, I don't know. I do think it's a spiritual thing too. Like the reason why they were calling me a Bando was because for other reasons. Um, the first place that I went to in Gabon was called Ibando. It's actually a great place for travelers who are trying to go experience Bwiti for the first time or go to Gabon. Ibando, it's a nonprofit organization that's been there for a long time. It's called The Beginning. It's because it's a good place to start learning about Gabon, the traditions.
Oh,
So that was where I went the first time. So they knew that. They knew I'd been to Ibando. That's where I came from. But then also, I was the first one from the West who had a clinic to be applying to Gabon through official channels for an export license. And so I think that was probably the largest reason was that they were seeing, first of all, I was the first outsider to be initiated at that village. Then, like the other layer of it was, I'm the first person to be going to Gabon and forming a benefits sharing agreement through the government channels. So I think they were aware of like multiple layers, and in Bwiti, they love that stuff, like where there's many meanings wrapped up in something. Then there was the internal layer that came up that was, yeah, would have probably happened anyways, just because of how my mind works. But that I think. Um, yeah, that was just a brilliant, sort of accurate name, I guess.
Ah, that is so cool. Yeah, I love whenever there's a million different meanings for the same thing. Well, look, if anybody is interested in checking out your business, I mean, how would
Yeah.
somebody go about doing that? Because I know that uh, Ibogaine is becoming more common, at least in the States. I think that they're trying to pass certain things. I think that there's actually like Ibogaine clinics either already in Texas. I live in Texas right now, or they're coming. But how would somebody reach out to you? Because I know that it can be pretty difficult to get involved in something like that for a beginner.
Yeah. So there's still a little ways away. Ibogaine clinics in the States, but there's definitely a lot of momentum there. So I'm sure we'll see clinical trials happening. I'm sure there'll be, increased discussions about it. Like, it's on Oprah and Rolling Stones all over the place now. So um, but we're in Mexico. We're just across the border from San Diego. We pick people up there, bring them down. It's very close to the border. Um, we've grown quite a bit, worked with a lot of military and first responders, and then we have whole sections that are set aside for special operations, guys that are getting grants for coming down. But there's just in Mexico, there's like 6 houses, so we got space for other people to come. It's popular, so there's a little bit of a waiting list. We've also opened up a place in Malta recently in Europe. So since January, they've been receiving people there. And so, anyways, if you're curious, we've got different programs. You don't have to be coming off of heroin. You don't have to be a SOCOM combat vet. You don't, to look into it. There's lots of people who are experiencing benefits or, curious about it for different reasons, including we've got a program now for people with neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's and MS, because there's just like different needs and requirements that people have physically going into it if they're older and have Parkinson's or if there's mobility issues and things like that. But it's been really cool to see people, discovering some improvements, different types of improvements with Ibogaine. So if you're curious, want to learn more, check us out, follow us, and you can find us online at ambio.life.
Perfect. Ah, that is so cool. I did not know about Parkinson's and stuff like that, that there actually could be benefits with that.
Yeah, so that's one of the cool things that we've been learning over the past couple of years with brain scans and whatnot is that it's actually changing the structure, physiological structure of different parts of the brain, including things that are rather difficult to change, like white matter in the brain. So, like MS is a degeneration of uh, like myelin in the white matter. And so there's evidence that we're seeing in mice and stuff of it helping to remyelinate. And so that tracks with what we see with people in MS. So there's a physical benefit underlying what is also a very emotional and cognitive and spiritual thing. But that's what it's all about. It's pulling all these threads together.
Unreal. Dude, you need to try and reach out to Michael J. Fox. If we can get another Back to the
Yeah.
Future, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on.
Yeah, dude. So, all right. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. This was an absolute blast. You're very informational, very knowledgeable about the subject, as I figured you would be. And do you want to leave an email or anything like that for anybody to come and find you?
I think it depends. Like I'm slammed, so I don't want to be rude, but we got a huge team, and if a message needs to get to me, it'll get to me. But go through the website, ambio.life. There's a whole like Ambio's big, so there's a whole bunch of people depending on what you're looking for, whatever information you need, people will get right back to
Perfect. All right. I'll have that link
you.
down in the show notes below for anybody who wants to be able to go and check it out. And I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us today, man.
Right on.
That was very fun. So thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, man. All
Oh,
right.
just real quick, if anybody has not dropped off yet, I got a book coming out. It's called Ibogaine and the Bicameral Mind. If you want to go into a little bit of what we were talking about. Comes out September 8th. You can pre-order it now wherever you buy books.
Oh, interesting. That's my son's birthday, so that's
Right
cool.
on. Cool.
I'll
Right on.
definitely be getting that one, sir, because I'm super interested in all the potential benefits of this. You know, it used to be seen as, this is just what losers do with psychedelics, and you're gonna ruin your life, or you do too much acid, you're gonna end up, like it was always the different stories. But to find out that a lot of these, plant medicines have profound benefits, not only personally or spiritually, but even physically. Man, I don't know how they're going to keep this off the market. Like on it, like it has to eventually come, because how many times have we looked at the medical system and all the downfalls of all the different prescriptions, and how much money's being made to just basically poison people and turn them into fucking customers of the system. This kind of stuff, from all the stories that I've heard from Ibogaine, it is you're unshackled. You're back to being you after a little while, and that's a beautiful thing. So, thank you so much for coming on, and hope to do it again, sir.
Right on. Thank you.
All right, that was Jonathan Dickinson. What an absolute stud. Really like that guy. I love people that, they go through such a hard time in life, and they're trying to find answers. They're trying to get back to themselves. They're trying to get back to some semblance of what may be, a home reality. And then you hear about people that, that try these plant medicines, and they are, I mean, dare I say, cured of a lot of mental things for sure. And the fact that he was bringing up the physical things as well. Fascinating to see it. And I love that there's so much research on the benefits of these plants, neuroplastically. There we go. You know what I'm trying to say. As far as the advancement and the helping of the neuroplasticity within the brain, which ultimately just helps you see from a broader perspective, in my experience. Whenever that starts to grow, it's that you're now becoming familiar of different parts of yourself and different perspectives of your own self, and that's that growing right there. That's what it feels like in my mind, anyway. He was a little hesitant to pull a tarot card. He said he used to read back in the day, and then it got too weird, which it can definitely get a little weird up in here. So I decided we're just going to do it after the show. And very interesting, we got the Ace of Wands card. Always a brilliant card to pull. But we got to pull it from the book. The Ace of Wands. The gift of creation is presented from the divine. Be open to exciting new possibilities. The Ace of Wands brings the gift of a new beginning. Oh, come on, man. Brings the gift of a new beginning rooted in passion and creativity. I can't make this shit up, dude. The hand of the divine emerges from a cloud, offering a single wand of visionary inspiration, sprouting green leaves. Beneath the wand is a lush landscape that includes a castle, a peaceful river, and a handful of fertile trees. This scene depicts stability, prosperity, movement, and the current of emotions that propels you forward, supporting a new venture. Wow, that is so freaking cool. He talked about how he got the name whenever he was over there, and it meant the beginning. And that's exactly what, after you come up out of an experience like that, it can be very new and very exciting. And you feel like a creativeness almost swirling inside of you. That's why you hear people that have near-death experiences or come up out of like major psychedelic trips or anything of the sort. They always... It's like the passion is absolutely renewed. Passion for life in general is absolutely renewed, but the creativity is where it gets really weird. We talked about a guy who had a near-death experience, and his name is escaping me right now. David Ditchfield. I don't know where I just pulled that out of. But David Ditchfield, he had an NDE, and all of a sudden, he's like, he's doing orchestras. He's writing music, for an entire orchestra. That's crazy. Out of nowhere, and became an amazing painter as well. So I think that it unlocks something inside of you. And it's not, it's not only for the near-death experiences, but it's anything that will get you outside of yourself. Sometimes all that needs to be is a really good dream. Maybe it's a really deep meditation, a past life regression, a psychedelic experience, a near-death experience, God forbid. But it seems like it just like plants a seed, and you're now able to grow with that seed. And it's so amazing. And it just goes to show how profound life is. That even whenever you think you got it all figured out, and that causes you to turn into some kind of downward spiral because you think nothing is real, and if nothing is real, then you're not real, and da-da-da-da. That's a dark alley to go down, and I don't suggest it. But instead, you find something within you that you once loved and maybe you forgot. Now, he was talking about the real, like what's the real? And I love that. I got to look into that guy that he was mentioning, Jacques something. But yeah, the Ace of Wands, inspiration and creativity. The spiritual message behind it, or personal, says when travel and adventure opportunities present themselves, embrace them. Beginning a health or fitness routine will bring renewed confidence and excitement into your life. This is an ideal time to take action on goals or creative projects you've been thinking about, so stay open to divine inspiration. Oh, man, what a card. And one thing that I've really been really trying to do lately, especially with all the different books we've been reading, it's the Basic Psychic Development by John Friedlander, the teachings of Don Juan, and everything that we were reading about before, with, what the hell is his name? Itzhak Bentov. It's like the more you start to understand how deeply, intricately woven into everything that is you is the system, then there is no more separation. And if there's no more separation, now you are no longer separated from the person you're talking to or anything like that. And if you can fully engage in a conversation, your entire attention is on the person that you're conversating with, I believe that you jump into their energy, or they jump into yours, or maybe the energies mesh, right? And so that's really what I've been trying to do lately, especially with guests, is I'll talk with them, and I try to, like, I imagine that I'm their best friend, because I want to be able to ask the things that maybe you wouldn't tell a regular stranger. Like, I want to be your person for that next hour or two, however long the show is going to go. And I believe that by submerging myself into their energy field, I know this might sound woo-woo to some people, but this is how I imagine it, and I believe that it's the right thing. But by submerging myself into their energy field, or merging the two energy fields together, every time the tarot card, it comes out perfect. It's like, this is beyond magic. This is just like what we are able to do. Because I've always said that every tarot card is magical in general. Whenever you pull a single card, or you want to do a 3-card draw, or you want to get, extra spicy with it and do 5, 7, or 9 or whatever, right? It's like, it is so interconnected that it blows you away. You're like, I'm the one shuffling these things. I didn't pick that out. And some people say, well, you subconsciously picked it out. And I'm like, how I try and understand how I could subconsciously pick that out, because the cards are turned over. I don't know what the hell's coming. But then again, they say that consciousness actually exists in the future, even if it's only a second or two. I don't know, dude. This is why I love learning about all this kind of stuff, because I think that it's the most important thing that any person can do, is to figure out A, what their purpose is, and B, what their role in the rest of civilization and reality is. And I think that if you truly can know yourself, and you truly can know your role, then whatever you're supposed to do is so clear that you fully submerge yourself into it, knowing that. And that's the difference, because we all think that we know, or we're pretty sure that we know what we're supposed to be doing and what our role is, and all that kind of stuff. But when you know, the idea of free will is like whimsical. It's like, it's stupid. I don't want to say stupid, because I know that there's a lot of people who are still on their own journey, but looking at it from this angle, it's almost like, well, yeah, I don't think there is any free will once you know what your purpose is. And it's not that you feel trapped or like you're in shackles or encaged or anything like that. It's just that you know what you're supposed to be doing. And maybe, maybe you believe that that is what your free will is. But I ultimately think that it's a path that we were meant to be on. And if you have a path that you're meant to be on, like it's some kind of predestined situation, then can there really be such thing as free will if you're doing what you were predestined to do? This is inside the mind of somebody who just thinks about this shit all day long. And this is why I am obsessed with learning about this kind of stuff and why I decided to give all of my love and all of my attention to this podcast. Many of you know that I came from the Cult of Conspiracy podcast, but after a little while, man, you know what you're supposed to be doing and you know what you're not supposed to be doing. And to fully give yourself into what you're meant to do, man, it just feels right. Call that whatever you want. It just feels like you're doing what you're meant to do. And that's a really comforting feeling because it's something that you got to do. It's not like you got to do the dishes or you got to do the laundry or anything like that. It's you got to, but at the same time, you want nothing more than to do that. It's pretty awesome. But anyhow, all right, well, we're going to wrap this one up. He could only go an hour. He said that he wasn't really structured on how long he could, shoot or anything, but I think that he was more used to doing hour-long shows. I don't like to push it beyond the limits with people because a lot of people, I'm sure he's been on plenty of other shows as well, but there's a lot of people who have never podcasted. And so there's a little bit of stage fright and you don't know what to say or what should I not say. And so that's usually why I like to throw out a couple of fucks in the beginning, calm them down a little bit. You can cuss here, use your regular language. But anyway, I digress. All right, we're going to bust up out of here. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed that conversation. If you or anybody has been dealing with any kind of substance abuse problems, maybe somebody that came back a little off whenever they came back from a war or anything like that, I hear nothing but great things for anybody that tries Ibogaine. Completely rewire and reshape, and it just does wonders to everybody's life that I've ever known that has done it. And yeah, it's a psychedelic and you're going to experience some weird shit, but dude, I'm telling you, it's beyond that. Like he was saying, it's beyond the visuals. It's about what happens afterward. And that's what I always say. The integration process is the most important thing you'll ever experience. The psychedelic's fun, but the integration, I mean, it's invaluable. So, like I said, yeah, so we're going to put that link down in the show notes below. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. But look, if Jonathan Dickinson came here and he taught you anything, it's that you don't know what you don't know. So don't just get weird.